Welcome back, everyone, to Cracking the Restaurant Labor Crunch. With this show, we really hope to help operators through the crisis. With me today, Mr. Jordan Boesch. He is the CEO and founder of 7shifts, the all-in-one labor management platform. Jordan, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Roger.
So, as you know, operators are struggling. The pandemic was the worst of it. And then just when you think the pandemic is done, it's emerging again with different variants, and the labor crisis is adding insult to injury, and operators everywhere are struggling. And you see the signs driving down the street, and everyone's, there's even people stealing other people's employees out of restaurant parking lots. Like, it's just awful. But the whole idea behind this show, of course, is to help operators with ideas that have been proven or solutions that may work, just to trigger thoughts that might help them through this crisis. So that's why I've got you on the show. So thanks so much for being here. What have you seen out there, Jordan, in your own perspective, your own clients, businesses? What are you seeing, and what can you offer to the show, to the audience?
Yeah, so we watched as when the pandemic hit, about 10% of restaurants closed down. Thankfully, only 1% of our customer base shut down. But during that time, yeah, we saw a lot of things change, and I think there are some underlying issues that have always been issues within the restaurant industry that have surfaced as now much larger issues that people are more vocal about. And I think that pay and benefits. I think there's definitely some challenges there as it becomes more of a mismatch for what the employees want and what the employers are willing to give. And I've seen it go both ways, where employers are holding out on potentially like increasing wages. I've seen the opposite, where employers have increased their wages and are having more success attracting folks. And I've seen folks, we've seen it in our system where menu prices increased 14% to presumably cover the cost of having to hike wages. And so I think that there's all sorts of things that are happening out there, and we're hopeful that some of these changes are going to be for the better longer term for the industry overall. But certainly around wages has been a hot topic.
Yeah, you're mentioning a couple of different things that are hot points right now, because, of course, when we're short staffed, I'm seeing restaurants that are closing their doors certain days of the week. They're shortening their hours. And when they are short staffed, I mean, business is booming right now. I mean, restaurants are really filling their seats, and customers are coming back in droves, yet we can't serve the demand. And guests still have certain high expectations of the service experience, which is not being delivered. Yet you mentioned that lots of restaurants are forced to raise menu prices just to cover the cost of labor. And that is just a perfect storm of, disgruntled customers. We're seeing, angry customers kind of like flying in the air. You hear on the news every day all the people that, for a variety of reasons are acting up on airline flights. They're doing that in restaurants. Instead of raising prices, I see so many restaurants that just don't have profitable menus, and their first thought is, oh yeah, I'm just going to hike my, the price of the different menu items, but they don't realize that everything they're selling just isn't profitable. And if they did this whole new menu mix analysis, that the key to really increasing profitability is having a very limited spread in each category among different items and all that sort of thing. And I see restaurants losing $3, $4, $5 because this appetizer is the more popular appetizer than that one, and it's less profitable than that one. And it happens in every category. So that's one thing I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But again, it's so challenging when other industries, and this is another point you raised, we're trying to compete with industries that traditionally have paid higher, and now they're struggling as well to find people. And you see the signs, health benefits are being offered now, and sign-on bonuses and all these things. And as you mentioned, restaurants that are traditionally a low margin business are just struggling to raise wages and to compete with other industries that are also looking for staff, and to continue to serve a customer in a changing marketplace, in a changing world. And, it's just such a struggle for everyone right now. So you're definitely raising really good points. Have you seen any of your clients doing anything really interesting to attract new staff that seem to be working?
Yeah. So I think that the whole like spiffing folks as like a one-time thing to get folks in the door. I mean, certainly people are offering that. I don't personally believe that that's a great long-term solution. I think what you touched on around like folks don't even understand a lot of times if the menu items are profitable. I think that is a good point. I think that that's like an underlying issue of just like um, the loss of visibility around operating margins in restaurants in terms of like a lot of operators just don't look at those
You're right.
in such like a way that I think they should, because margins weren't always as low as they are today. Certainly not. I was talking to operators that were operating for like 15 years ago. They're like, yeah, like they're worse nowadays than they've ever been.
They are.
And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of success with like QSRs that are just focused on one thing. We do burgers, and it's just like it's a very and most of those are doing okay. And so I think when I look at creativity around what some of the folks that are doing in our system, um, yeah, I mean, to me it comes back to they're creating the environment in which you want to be a part of something, and that kind of comes with a few different flavors. So the culture is an important thing, and like who you work with. Like when we surveyed our customer base, our employee base, and said like, what do you care about the most? It wasn't pay. Mind you, this was pre-pandemic, but the number one thing employees cared about the most was like, I want to work with great coworkers. And how do you get great coworkers to all, how do you get that right match? And I think that so that work environment is an important thing, and hiring based on some core values and lightweight things like that to kind of shape who you hire, and hiring for those behaviors to um, kind of get the word out and allow those people that are maybe great employees to hire other great employees. And that's typically what we've seen is they start to take like this hiring process a little bit more seriously, and are even willing to pay more for these type of folks that end up getting through their process. So it's not something, and I know that a lot of independents especially said like, what, I don't like core values, like what these are like for big companies, like I don't have time to do that, it's crazy. But I'm not. I want to be clear. I'm not advocating for like a massive, huge corporate framework. I think just advocating for some simple behavioral norms that you want to build your environment by, and get people bought into the mission of what you're doing and like why you do what you do, and selling that story. I don't think operators really sell their story enough about like why they do what they do, and the type of environment that you're going to work in, and the opportunities you're going to have in that environment. And you see, look, Sally or John over here, they've been here for 3 years, or they're a manager now, and this could be you if you want it, and if not, that's okay. But I think there's so much more that people can do. I think they just use. I think for too long we've just made it an excuse that, oh, we're in this industry and it's just the way it is, and I don't need to change much. So I think the creativity is starting to show, and there are operators that are being wildly successful right now, and there's obviously unfortunately some that aren't.
I think you're hitting a foundational element. We're talking about creating a company culture and a chemistry amongst the team where it's fun. They want to be there. And yes, everyone works for a paycheck, but they also work to be fulfilled in what they're doing. And I think that comes with leadership by example, as opposed to pre-pandemic. I mean, there were lots of managers out there that just barked orders and told people what to do versus nurturing and developing the talent they had, keeping them happy so that people want to be there because it's a fun, great team environment. I think that's awesome. Let's talk about that within your company, because you're in the hospitality space, and granted you're not running a restaurant, but you serve restaurants. But you mentioned that people aren't necessarily looking at the pay as much as they're looking at people they want to work with. What's your mission statement? What's your company culture all about, and how do you nurture that and develop that and onboard new people? And let's talk about that, because I think there's some key learnings there.
Yeah, so our mission is to simplify team management and improve performance for restaurants. And a lot of the decisions we make as a company and as a product team center around that mission. And if it's not going to if it's not going to improve the performance for a restaurant and simplify the team management side, like we just don't do it. And so rallying people around that is really important. But we we have a lot of like, just like a restaurant, we are a company. And I want to just be clear that like, just because we're a tech company doesn't mean there aren't um, things that we can share that are go kind of hand in hand with running a company. And so when we established our core values, it started with something. I always give operators a very tangible example. It's, just start with like who you would clone. Like if you could clone anyone in your restaurant, who would you clone? And it's like everyone knows, I have this person and this person.
Hmm.
Great.
Right, right.
And write down all the things you really admire about them and what make them really special, and identifying those key traits. And then invite those people into the room with you and say, hey, John, Sally, we really want to build more team. We want to have more team members as part of this environment, just like you. Here are the things we think are great about you. Can you help us kind of like consolidate these and start to narrow down to what our oxygen traits are, the ones we can't breathe without, as it relates to having an environment where the team is high functioning and people actually want to be here, and vote on those, and make them action based, so that they can be demonstratable. So instead of using words like respect can mean a lot of things. So rather, what do you mean by that? Oh, I mean that someone listens well. Okay, well then the value is a good listener. And then you can demonstrate that, and you can be critical on whether or not that person is demonstrating being a good listener or not. And you can hold them accountable to those things. And then you roll it out to the company, and you include those 2 folks or 3 folks that you thought were great, because everyone looks up to them anyways. Because if they are truly the best workers, other people around them know that, and it helps to get that floor level buy-in from the employee, saying, when the managers and the operators leave the room, where there's a few employees that go, they're like, guys, like, isn't this exciting? Like, this is kind of what we're all about, and we're going to be part of the hiring process, and we want to make sure this is a great place for you folks to work, and that you can feel safe, empowered, and bought into what we're doing. And so, anyway, that's just a very light way of thinking about it that I think could go a long ways.
I think that's applicable to any business or any industry.
Exactly.
I think that made perfect sense. So thanks for sharing that. Let's talk now about your all-in-one labor management platform and just what 7shifts is all about, how it works, what it does, and how that can benefit operators right now during the crisis. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so we are a team management platform for the restaurant industry with a core focus around scheduling and engagement. So what I mean by that is we help operators schedule and set labor targets, and we forecast using the historical data that we pull in from point of sales, and we provide a mobile app for employees as they can check their shifts, trade shifts upon manager approval, of course, communicate with their coworkers, and stay in the loop, honestly. And so we kind of wanted to take a spin on this from the engagement perspective, that we want it to be less of a top-down approach, rather a top-down, bottoms-up. So constant kind of feedback going back and forth as it relates to having that flexibility that the employees want, but also meeting the needs of that operator in terms of what their business needs. And I think that those need to meet, and so we've taken a big emphasis on that. So we don't just build only for the operator. That is certainly a big focus, but we also build tools for the employees to ensure that they are engaging at the level that employer needs. So we look at building across what we refer to as the employee life cycle. So everything from the moment an employee is hired in a restaurant, they're trained, scheduled, they're then paid after they work their shifts using a payroll company, and then they're effectively retained. So we recently rolled out some tip management solutions.
Wonderful. That's
and
so important right now.
Where folks can eventually also get get their tips and have them distributed appropriately, and looking at how we can further make that experience easier for restaurant operators and the employees. But in terms of where we focus and the impact we want to have, it's really centered around that employee life cycle.
I really like the voice that you're giving staff within an organization. Can we elaborate a little bit more there? Because I think it's so important for people to think that their ideas matter and that their voice is heard, and that it's not just do this job and their boss doesn't care about what they think about it. It's like, that's your job, that's how you do it. But no, I think it's so important right now to give people flexibility if possible in schedules. It sounds like you can do that with this program. You can sort of trade schedules with other people, or shifts, and also interact with management and tell them how things are working, or back and forth. It's an idea sharing platform as well, I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the shift in 7shifts, you'll as an employee, you'll get a push notification to your phone saying, "Hey, Roger, how was your shift today?" And smiley face, sad face, neutral face, write some
That's
comments.
great. Yep.
And it's stuff like that where, it's all about the lightweight pieces of feedback. Like it doesn't need to be a huge, heavy-handed process. It's just merely keeping a pulse on your staff. How are they doing? Trying to encourage and understand, how they're feeling, and um, ideally, in our product, like if we notice folks are always clocking in on time, they're working shifts for others, they're picking up shifts for others, they're saying that they're enjoying their shifts, that's a really healthy employee. And you should try and keep them engaged.
Yes.
If all of a sudden that employee that was once really engaged starts dropping all their shifts, and that's weird because they work Fridays all the time because they get paid more, but now they're dropping their Friday shifts and they're not picking up shifts for others, and they're saying that they're having negative shifts when they work with specific managers, that's probably information you want to know as an operator, because there may be a manager mishire that's looming, that's going to create a toxic environment. And we've seen that with operators that use our product, where there was a mismanagement or a mishire on the management side, and they got all the engaged scores dropped, and then they got rid of the manager, and all the engaged scores went back up. So it's that pulse when you can't be there to see the day to day as an operator because you're busy doing a million things, that we want to have some kind of, you just want your finger on the pulse.
That's a wonderful piece of the pie right there. That what you just said is so important in so many restaurants because, yeah, there's a lot of owner operators that have multiple units and they have other businesses and they're out of touch, in addition to the independent operator that's there 24/7. But it just makes so much sense to get a pulse on how things are going on a daily basis. And boy, that gives you so many different red flags and points out the problems that you have so you can solve them before it becomes, like you say, a toxic environment. And then that gives people so many reasons to move on to another employer. And one of the key things you need to do right now is keep your good people happy, keep them motivated,
Exactly.
keep them productive, and keep them making friends with your customers on the floor every day that you're open. Fantastic, Jordan. Thanks so much. How can people find 7shifts? You want to give them a URL?
Of course, they can visit www.7shifts.com. That's the number 7 and then the word shifts, like shift work, just plural.com. And yeah, if you can poke around there, you can explore a lot of different things that we have to offer on the site, whether it's core scheduling needs, time and attendance, payroll integrations, POS integrations, task management, compliance. We do a lot of that stuff as our core. So you can sign up for a free trial and try it out.
Fantastic. So there's a free trial, and I guess that's why you call it the all-in-one labor management platform, because it does so much. Fantastic, Jordan. Thanks so much for joining us on the show, and thanks to Performance Food Service for being the diamond sponsor of our program. And we'll see you in another installment of Cracking the Restaurant Labor Crunch. Thanks to our audience for tuning in.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you, Jordan.